So this is Amy with Creative Catapult Coaching.
And this is Megan with Focus Like a Mother. And we're on the Control Alt Think podcast, Conversations with Neurodivergent Minds.
And this is going to be our official inaugural episode. This is episode 1, and Megan and I just thought we'd touch base about body doubling and see where it takes us. And now we're both
Yes.
going to sit here awkwardly as we go, okay, we had a script and now it ended.
Yes. So Amy, you have been telling me about body doubling for a while in our coaching sessions and stuff. So I guess tell me more about like what body doubling is. I know we've done it a few times with our work stuff virtually over Zoom, but give me all the details.
All the details. You're asking a lot of my short-term memory. Um, But body doubling is basically any time that you're working in the same vicinity as somebody else. Your tasks may be related, they may not be. But a lot of times somebody with ADHD or neurodivergence may have stumbled into this by being horribly mortified that suddenly, as soon as their friend walks in the door to hang out, they're able to open their mail. They're able to fold the laundry. They're able to match socks or things that just weren't doing before. But body doubling can actually be leveraged to be a really effective technique when you intentionally decide, oh, I'm going to work on a thing and do it with somebody else, whether that's virtually, whether that's in person, whether that's with people you know, or going somewhere like a library or coffee shop.
So kind of like helping with the motivation and attention to the task. And then like what we've done is we'll follow up partway through. We'll set like an hour or a 2 hour block and we'll connect on Zoom and I'll be sitting here at my computer and work on things. And you'll be, so like our session last week, you were working on things. So you went and cut up some vegetables for, meals because you were like, oh, hey, I haven't been able to get this thing done. I'll start with that. And so you kind of told me what you were going to work on and I told you what I was going to work on. And then when you came back to the computer and started figuring out what task you were going to accomplish next, I actually paused you and said, hey, I was working on this graphic design thing. Can I get an extra set of eyes? So it was kind of cool to be able to like collaborate, even though they're like unrelated. It was just nice to get that kind of social feedback. Um, and it's interesting, this concept of body doubling. I have seen it. You and I have talked about it for a while, but then I have also seen it in the ADHD and autistic community for parents of ADHD and autistic children. And a lot of times it's parents who are neurodivergent themselves. So a lot of the accounts that I follow and stuff. So I've seen them talking about body doubling with your, preschooler or kindergartner or young child of like, um, well, for my son, it's like have him help sort some of the laundry while I fold it,
Uh-huh.
or like cleaning up toys, something like that. That especially with like demand avoidance and stuff, they're like, I can't do the thing. But if you're doing something alongside of them and not doing a totally separate activity, um, a lot of times we have more success of actually getting the thing done. So
Yeah.
I just find it really interesting.
And I find that there hasn't been a lot of studies I've seen that have pinpointed yet exactly what it is, but there is often some credit given to motivation, just again, like you said, the social connection with somebody else. I've heard it theorized that there might be something in mirror neurons, so our brain and body kind of tune in to the energy that
Mm.
somebody else is doing. Especially if you're at a library or a coffee shop, it kind of can help that we'll instinctively copy a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times the energy that's around us. There's like you and I were talking through setting and verbalizing the task and knowing that somebody will check in with you on it at a certain point in time. Um, so it provides some clarity for us both to kind of pull through and get to the point of what am I working on and getting started, because I know so often for myself with ADHD, I'll think I know what I'm going to do, but I may not know exactly what it is, but I don't realize that until I find that I am unable to get started for 20 or 30 minutes. Whereas somehow that energy of being around somebody else and talking through it, verbalizing it, I've heard can help compensate for the working memory or the inability to manage a lot of the executive function. And so by speaking, you can help support your brain. Not that body doubling always has to involve speaking. A lot of the virtual platforms, you'll end up typing in your goal or intention for the next work block, and then you may or may not check in with your partner or group.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just sitting here thinking about like, for me, some things would work or be beneficial with the concept of body doubling. So, like getting a change of scenery and getting out of the house and working from a coffee shop, depending on the day and the mood and the motivation and the energy, sometimes that feels like overwhelming. So, you and I have talked about I will task stack. So, I will plan to go to the coffee shop before I have a networking meeting or some other activity that has a time-based requirement to it that's out of the house. So I'll go to the coffee shop in the morning and work for like an hour before I have to go to a meeting or something else that's out of the house. And I've not done that set up as body doubling, although on Friday I actually mentioned to some of my networking peers, like, hey, if any other solopreneurs are interested in meeting up at a coffee shop, and, it sounded really weird working separately, but together. At the same time. So
That's
for
funny
me,
because, yeah, so many of us, that's just become so normal in many circles I work in. I forget that people still find it
yeah, so
unusual.
trying to explain the concept of body doubling to people who are like, oh, well, yeah, that would be like, otherwise I just work by myself all the time and like, or going to a co-working, like that's the concept of going to a co-working space,
Right.
is that you have other people to go say hey to when you're getting coffee at the little coffee bar, or, you can share a conference room or whatever. So the concept of body doubling works for especially a lot of those like solopreneur type things. It's interesting. As you're talking, there's also some things with the way my brain works that body doubling or just having another person present, um, I don't know I don't know what it's formally called, but I can't do the thing. There's somebody else there. I cannot do the thing. So it's like, for me, cleaning the house, I can't do the thing. It has to be a me by myself thing. And I've been validated by some of the profiles I follow, the accounts I follow on Instagram, because
Uh-huh.
there's at least one girl that her video was like she was doing the dishes and somebody walked in and like, oh hey, thanks for doing the dishes. And she was like, yeah, you're here now. And you noticed, she said, she doesn't like being perceived. So like you noticed that I was here and that I was doing the dishes, and now my brain says I can't be doing this anymore because you noticed that I'm here. Um, and so I have like even I can think of this through my entire life. Like when I was a kid, I would only clean my room in the middle of the night when everybody else was asleep. I used to actually put my trapper keeper outside my room with a little note on it that said the cleaning fairy was visiting. And I still have yet to ask my mom. Like I always thought that they thought it was the cleaning fairy showing up. No, it was me staying up all night cleaning my room. But I couldn't do it when other people are around. So
Fascinating.
my
That
brain has this concept of body doubling juxtaposed with this um, anxiety of being
being
perceived while
perceived.
doing tasks. And so there are some things like some of my desk work, or even the concept of sitting on the porch when I lived in an apartment where I could like see the whole parking lot and like people watch, basically. The concept of working in a coffee shop while people watching, or working from the balcony while people watching, like in some ways that's comfortable, but then in other ways, certain things I can't do the
That's
thing if
interesting.
there's
Can
anybody
you
else around. I don't know why.
is there a theme or a type of thread that you can see that runs through where you're able to be perceived and where it becomes a problem?
Definitely cleaning. Like I cannot
Cleaning
think
of all
of
or any type?
like organizing, moving stuff. I'm trying to think, like when I had a roommate in college, how that went. But like roommate now, it's my husband. So like there'll be a lot of times where if I want to get something done, I'm like, okay, you need to take the kids and go shopping or something and leave the house. Like you can't be around. I don't know why. So that one's like a really common thread, is like basic tasks like that. Um, Laundry doesn't, but like folding laundry and stuff doesn't really bother me. I'll probably be more productive if I can. What I used to do when I lived by myself was like put uh this one of the same movies on all the time. Um, and then that would be going in the background, and or music, and I would be able to get stuff done.
Is it anything about predictability and being in control of the environment and not having your senses disrupted?
I don't know if it's that or if it's tied to like sort of like social or general anxiety type of things. Like somebody might be watching me do whatever I'm doing, or like just that, like the way the girl on Instagram, I think her name's Morgan Foley, put it, was being perceived. And I like sat there thinking about it, and I was like, no, I can totally relate to that, but not on everything. So work, at one point I was in not the best work environment. And all of my peers from my engineering office decided that they were all going to work in the conference room so that they could watch each other work, which, now thinking about the concept of body doubling, maybe it helped them focus.
Uh-huh.
But at the time, it felt like I was being judged and I couldn't
Or
actually do any.
micromanaged even or something?
Yeah. So I could not, like, if I sat, my anxiety would go through the roof if I tried to sit in the conference room and work. So I stayed. And at the time, my cubicle was like tucked in a back corner in a very kind of dimly lit, like nice, quiet, cozy space. And so the conference room was this very bright room. Now that I know about sensory profiles and some of the other things tied with the nervous system and fight, flight, and freeze and anxiety and stuff, now when I look back, it's like I see it from a totally different perspective. My peers were probably enjoying the concept of body doubling, but my anxiety wouldn't let me participate. But then it ended up being an actual social, like a workplace dynamic tension and conflict, because I didn't want to be working with them. So it's interesting.
It's an
um
interesting piece of, well, and I think so much of,
I think it was I didn't have choice. We were told, like they said, we're doing this and everybody's going to do it. So that demand avoidance, and the drive for autonomy, I didn't have autonomy in choosing whether I wanted to body double or not.
so there was a whole
I
bunch of layers associated with
Yeah,
it.
but like even times when we're talking, a lot of times or not talking, but like in our coaching calls, you'll ask
Uh-huh.
me, it's not really body doubling, but the accountability piece I really struggle with. Um, a lot of times you or other peer coaches will ask me, um, like, okay, well, what do you want to get accomplished this week? And that's something that I've always struggled with when somebody says, kind of like putting the thing out into the world of this is what I'm working on or what I'm going to
Yeah.
do. Um, because I don't know, if I feel like if it doesn't happen, like there's just
Yeah. Well, and
that
how much of
that
that,
question
frankly,
raises
is,
my anxiety.
yeah,
It
is
all, for me, it all comes
autonomy.
back to anxiety.
Yeah, is autonomy versus, for me, I sometimes am reluctant to commit to something because in my head I've failed enough times that, but that's a different underpinning to why I might not want to commit versus where it sounds like you having a choice in the matter, whereas mine is often that I'm not sure that I'm going to succeed at it. So if I don't say it, then I don't have to do
Yeah,
it.
I think a lot of it comes back to autonomy and control, because even like and like others' expectations, that sort of social difference piece of like, well, what's the expectation now? So like when someone's talking about, yeah, anything to do with cleaning. So if I'm doing dishes or picking up clutter or reorganizing or whatever it is, tends to need to be a solo activity. And I think part of that is expectations, whether they're real or perceived, or like somebody else is aware that this is going on and now I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, well, this is interesting. We seem to have veered into perception
Sorry,
and
but
demands
it was
versus body
it was
doubling.
interesting on the body doubling piece because it has that, even though I have that, like I said, it's the two
Yeah, no, it's an
things.
interesting thing.
Sometimes it works.
And, I think that there's something really useful in knowing ourselves and reflecting that, oh, this is the kind of task that body doubling would work for you or for me or whoever. But also knowing that there are times that it's not an appropriate tool and it's not
Hmm.
the do all and end all, despite lots of communities I'm part of that focus on body doubling. And it's like, this is the answer to all your problems. And it's like, it is one tool. It is not the only tool. And knowing kind of where and how it's going to benefit is something you develop over time. As a coach, what would it be useful for somebody to do to help counter that balance between autonomy and moving your agenda forward, which is so much of that coaching piece? And so often I'll have people do things in session that is kind of like body doubling, but from my perspective and knowledge, a lot of it is practice, and also somebody saying, yes, I will, or no, I won't. And I'm aware that there can be some power dynamics that, people want to do it because I've got some power, which, hopefully most of my clients see me as peer, but we often still will do something to try and make somebody else happy. And yet I try to be the more I learn, I try to be very careful and open-ended in making sure that people feel like they've got the autonomy to do a thing or not do a thing or name their own progress. And I'm not sure that I have a good idea or conception of the best way to support somebody if they, are hitting the observed demand
Well, it's
conflict.
interesting, because like when I think about some of the kind of patterns, is the expectation piece. So like being very aware that the other person that I'm body doubling with has no expectation of me and it's all my choice. And then being very specific about what I want to accomplish. So going into a body doubling session, kind of not necessarily knowing the specific thing I want to work on, but okay, if I'm going to go to the coffee shop and meet up with somebody, or if I'm going to have a Zoom call with Amy to accomplish something for 2 hours, um, going into it knowing, okay, it comes with the self-awareness. Like, what have I been stuck on this week and what do I want to try?
Mm-hmm.
And then framing it as that, of not in absolutes, not, oh, I'm going to get, I think last week I was working on some promo card designs for my expo that's coming up. And so I think I told you, like, oh, my goal is to try to get these designed. But framing it as, my goal is to do this or make progress on this, but not, hey, I'm going to get this done. So I think it's just the language that works for each person and the way each person's brain works. Because I've got other people and clients that, well, like you said in session, sometimes getting, and we've had that before where you've said, do you want to do this now? Would it help? For me, it's less about the accountability and more about the opportunity. It's present in my mind and I'll forget about it if I don't do it
Right.
right this second. Um, but it doesn't feel like a demand. It's an opportunity. So as long as I can frame it with that autonomy language, this is an opportunity to get this done or to get, if I'm working on something I might want feedback on, or like if I'm writing something and like, hey, Amy, can you read this? Or can you look at this design or whatever? Um,
Yeah. So we've
that
taken,
works better.
yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. We've actually taken much more peer-oriented feedback aspect to the body doubling than I typically have seen it done, where a lot of times a lot of strategies that work for people are running Pomodoro sprints. So 25 minutes of focused work on a identified task, then taking a 5-minute break, and totally switching gears is the intention. Give your brain a break, because if you keep scrolling through social media or working on the email, your brain isn't actually having the time or the space to recharge. And so part of what the body doubling aspect is it provides some structure for people who need structure, whether that's something loosely social, knowing there's somebody we can ask for feedback or who will check and see how we're doing on a thing, or defining some time blocks and some breaks to help somebody from getting sucked into hyperfocus, because a lot of people with neurodivergence, whether that's ADHD, autism, or a lot of the other things, we can lose such track of time that we'll spend 2 hours, 4 hours, 10, 12 hours on a project without stopping, without eating,
I don't know what you're
without,
talking about. I didn't go to bed at 2 a.m. last night. Oh no, that was the night before. I don't know. All the
anyway,
nights are the
and
same at this point.
yeah. And so, and that, again, is thinking through, yeah, there are points where interrupting oneself every 25 minutes isn't ideal for everybody because it can take so long to get yourself back into it that a lot of people struggle with Pomodoros and time boxing, because once they pull out of that focus, they can't get back into it. So the having a structure and having somebody else lead it can help manage some of the executive function demands on it, which
Mm.
is not something in the way that we've set up our sessions. But if you go to something like focus.space, which is a community I'm a member of, FocusMate, there are more sites out there doing body doubling and focus sessions than I ever even knew existed. There are people running writing sprints or study with me things on YouTube. It is quite easy to find people and places to body double with if you're intrigued about doing it online or virtually. I also know that some people with anxiety issues or don't really want, it feels risky to work with somebody from a virtual service who you don't know, which never had occurred to me. But there are lots of different ways and communities to do. A lot of the communities will have rules set up in place about cameras on or off or what the expectation is. Or working with a friend can be a way
Mm.
to get through that as well. But there are a lot of interesting points of resistance people have had to even trying it. And that's
Yeah,
something that I find surprising. But again, it's funny how our own experience really informs our own bubble. And it's like somebody else's bubble is totally different than mine. It's like, oh, yeah, that totally makes sense. Totally did not occur to me because that is apparently not an issue in my world. But, finding ways to work through the issues around tools or body doubling, if you want to try it, is really valid.
yeah, it's interesting the social piece. So we've talked about FocusMate before and some of the other communities. And you mentioned FocusMate to me like last year sometime. And I still haven't done it. And I think part of it is the anxiety of the unknown of like, I
Mhm.
don't know how this is going to work. I don't know who this other person is going to be. Again, back to expectations, like I don't know, but then it's almost like I need a happy middle ground of like acquaintance, but not um I don't know, ours turn into more collaborative because we have so many things in common or our work is overlapping in some ways. So we are giving each other feedback as solopreneurs and coaches. But like if I think about, you know, a friend or neighbor like saying, "Hey, do you want to work on some of your stuff and I'll come sit on your porch with you and work on my stuff." My fear is that it'll just turn into social hour instead of like
And that is
actual
a legitimate
work done.
concern and
So
something
it's
to,
like I need to know you so that I know that like you're not going to think, I don't know, that my anxiety is not going to like be talking in my head the whole time. But I also don't want to be like super buddy buddy because, or we need to have a very clear, like, this is what we're going to accomplish today. We need to hold each other accountable on not getting super buddy buddy social time. Because it's like I need a happy medium. So I think that's part of why I'm like not sure how this is going to go.
yeah, no, it's interesting. But again, I think there's a lot in that. And if it is a technique you want to try identifying the pieces that are keeping you from doing it, but then also having some expectations and feeling comfortable to set some ground rules with somebody if you're doing it with somebody you know or aren't well and going, this is not me sitting here chatting with you for the next 3 hours about whatever comes up.
Hmm.
And so, and I think too, as neurodivergent people, we often have some anxiety over what conversation topics are going to come up with somebody we don't know, because I don't do most TV, I don't do most sports. And yet I will also throw out there that, if you come in and propose a topic and a format, and act with some authority in, this is what we're doing and how we're doing it, other people are willing to follow the leadership. And so when I know for a lot of years, I've managed a lot of my anxiety by trying to give myself a purpose. And when I can come in and outline this is what we're doing and why and what the outcome is, people are like, oh, okay. And then I'm fine. But yeah, going
Yeah.
into an open-ended odds and ends
Well, I hear
circumstance.
the pattern of the control piece come up too, right? So if you go in with authority, that is the sense of your own personal control. And so therefore, I'm setting expectations. I know what's expected of me. I know generally how this is going to work, and now I can move forward. So I never really thought about it from like instead of going in letting the unknown be the standard, going in with this is how it's going to work for me, um, gives more feeling of control, I think.
Yeah. Well, and we have gotten way off topic from body doubling. I'm wondering if we should move towards wrapping this up.
Yes.
Um,
Well, and I think
and
we did
again, I
talk
think
a
good.
lot about it.
Yeah, no, and I think again, a lot of related issues that come up around something like this. And again, I'm sure we could keep going on to a lot of associated nuances with all of that. And we'll probably save that for future conversations. Um,
Yes. But I
but
do the benefits of it are definitely there of motivation and accountability. And also the um setting the time. So like when you're body doubling, it's like time
you're
blocking,
creating,
like you're
yeah,
scheduling.
you're creating some structure for yourself
Hmm.
and, multiple layers of structure that you've chosen consciously or not by using a body doubling kind of system. Time, people, task, environment,
Hmm.
um, and hopefully then paying some attention to your energy, but then also setting up work pulses so you can focus and pull out and do a little bit of recharge and go back in as well. But, setting up a focus body doubling session in a way that supports you and how you work, whatever that
Yeah.
is.
Well, and like ours have, even though they've been more collaborative than true body doubling, have been helpful for me to then stack focus time after it, because you know this better than I do. Is it oxytocin from social interactions?
Actually, I
Is
think
that
this is
still?
more your specialty, is the actual
Yeah,
neurotransmitter.
I know. I have to, my brain is not braining. But basically the energy that you're getting from doing something with someone else,
Right.
even just
I
alongside
would
them.
end up calling it
Um,
dopamine, but there's probably a multitude of neurochemicals
yeah,
play.
yeah. Well, the accomplishment would definitely be the dopamine, and I think the social piece is more on the oxytocin side, and I have to look to make sure
Well,
because
and the dopamine,
late
though,
nights.
being anything about accomplishment and seeking, dopamine being something that creates drive.
Yes, yes.
Drive to connect is the social piece.
Yeah, yeah. The
That the
oxytocin piece is like
calming and bonding.
petting puppies and hugging someone, and so that's why I'm like, it could be like that warm fuzzy feeling of if you
Yeah.
have good rapport. But anyway, but I have found the benefit just in the last couple weeks of stacking that then with my own focus time, because now I've raised all of those happy chemicals, dopamine
Well,
and all
and
its
you're also
friends.
not context switching any longer. A lot of times the neurodivergence switching between vastly unrelated tasks can be a monumental task. Sometimes it's can be oddly easy, but other times that task switching piece is
Yeah. So using the body
awful.
doubling to get into the focused workspace, and then it's like, well, the body doubling ends, but I can still sit there and focus because now I'm in the space already doing the work. Although then I tend to fall into hyper focus, and 6 hours later, oh, hey, I should eat dinner. Um, but hey,
Yeah. And again, like everything, there's a lot of messy variables. But I will try and drop some links at the end, just some other articles explaining it. I saw something that talked about 5 or 6 different pillars or areas that not hyper focus, body doubling impacted, and I can't recall them off the top of my head, but it's one of a multitude of tools. It's almost infinitely flexible, and finding a way to make it work could be another piece for you to try in your ways of getting stuff done.
yep. And from the sounds of it, depending on the person, it can work for a whole bunch of different, everybody's going to have different things types of tasks that it'll work great for.
Yep. Thank you for
So
joining us.
not one size fits all, but different sizes for different people's brains.
Going back to the old TV, different strokes for
Yeah,
different folks.
I was
I
trying
may have
not to
just
go there,
dated myself there.
but well, you can go ahead and wrap us up then, Amy.
All right. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time.